Just wait for it to kick in a minute.
All righty then.
Kick in. And we should be good to go. Hello and welcome just to family. I am your host, Melissa Krechler. I'm an identity coach, spiritual teacher, business mentor, creator of Giving You Something to Talk About Live TV, as well as I created the movement, Women Supporting Women. And that is one of my absolute favorite movements. So today's episode, we are doing imposter syndrome, and a lot of women and some men do experience imposter syndrome, and just how devastating that can be for us as we are trying to create a business, even if our everyday lives. We experience it in our relationships, our everyday lives, everywhere. So today's episode is sponsored by Genuine Conversations, which happens to be owned by Jennifer Beitz, our lovely co-host. So I'm going to ask everybody to like, follow, and share the show. If you have any questions, pop them into the comments. If you are catching the replay of this episode, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Jennifer. Link in the comments. Genuine Conversations is offering you access to their 3 courses on shattering your limiting beliefs, which is part of imposter syndrome. So Jennifer, please introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you so much, Melissa. What a wonderful introduction. And I'm so grateful to be able to connect with you here today, especially on such an important platform where women are supporting women. And today, the topic of imposter syndrome is something I'm very passionate about as well. Like you mentioned in the intro, many of us suffer from it, and myself included.
Mm-hmm. Me as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'm happy to be here today so that we can dive deeper and kind of explore what imposter syndrome is and what are some ways we can overcome it. And I just look forward to diving deeper with you.
Absolutely. Sounds great. And for anybody watching, Jennifer and I are both from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And I wanted to start off this episode by saying that even being raised, you think being raised in Canada, right? We're the land of the free. We're, wide open. We're very diverse and multicultural. But growing up in Winnipeg, that's like the equivalent of Chicago in the US. That's the equivalent of, Winnipeg is one of the most demeaned places in Canada because our standard of living is lower, the conditions of our city are lower. So even being raised here, we're conditioned to believe that we're not as bright or beautiful as Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary, Edmonton, right? So
yes.
We already have that ingrained in ourselves. Now, when people ask me, where are you from? I'm like, Central Canada, right? Like the first thing I say is Central Canada. But I've gotten to a point where I'm like, I'm not ashamed to be from Winnipeg. I'm not ashamed to be from Winnipeg. Being from Winnipeg is, friendly Manitoba. I have the ability, and I'm assuming you will agree, but correct me if I'm wrong after. Growing up in Winnipeg, you're taught, to be friendly to everybody, to say hi. If you walk down the street and somebody says hi to you, you say back. But being in Winnipeg, we're also taught that if you piss that person off, right? Like if you walk up to somebody, and I've lived in different provinces, okay? Living in those different provinces, the attitude and the immediate disrespect is just disgusting. And I said, do you even know where I'm from? They're like, nope. I said, I'm from Winnipeg. Now, Winnipeg, we are gracious and loving and genuine, right? To whoever we meet. Until you piss us off, then we're going to throat punch you. That's just the way it goes, right?
Tell it like it is, girl.
It is, right? Growing up in Winnipeg. But we are conditioned. That's how we're raised in Winnipeg, is to be humble, to be kind, to, help out our fellow humans, right?
Yes.
Be a part of the community. Winnipeg is such an understated community or city, yet we have such culture in this city. I think our city is one of the most character building cultural hub centers of Canada because we aren't skyscrapers everywhere. We aren't, all of these big fancy, like we have fancy, but it's character, it's old school. It's, you're almost thrown back in time in some way living in Winnipeg, because we don't walk down the street and it's all, like I said, the skyscrapers and the fancy people and tourists galore. It's homey.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And yes, it's the land of resilience.
Absolutely. But the imposter syndrome, again, from being raised in Winnipeg, Manitoba, is quite, and I was thinking about that right before we jumped on. I'm like, we're both from Winnipeg. I was like, oh, see, it is Winnipeg, right? And we're taught that it's, it's okay to feel the way that we're feeling. It's, everybody's accepted for who they are. And if you're not, too bad, like, right? But imposter syndrome is a huge one that anybody experiences. But being from Winnipeg, what would you think about that? Would you agree that being from Winnipeg's kind of already given us that conditioning?
Well, absolutely. I think it's more than, and in addition to location, environment, if you will, I also think it has to do with the conditioning, that gender that we receive as genders growing up, right? So boys typically are raised to take more risks, to, just when we look at something like the playground, right? And when we have boys at the playground, they're running around freely, going past the limits of where within their parents' reach. They're most often climbing the monkey bars to levels that are out of reach. They're often taking more risks and wrestling and just have different behaviors than the girls, who are often raised to follow others' directions, to stay within the lines, to not rock the boat, and don't even try to climb a tree. You might, get your knees dirty, fall and get your outfit dirty. Right.
Yeah.
And so girls are definitely conditioned differently than the boys are, which can also play a role in that imposter syndrome as we go through our journey of childhood into adulthood. So in addition, Melissa, yes, in addition to that environment that we're in, I also believe it's that's, stereotypical way that boys and girls are raised that can also lead to that.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of, and going back to environmental, the mindset behind environmental, right? Not just in Winnipeg, but in smaller communities, in smaller locations, in locations that are very much a cultural experience. There's the belief that, growing up in Winnipeg, and I'm going to use this as an example again, growing up in Winnipeg, you're not encouraged to become movie stars or become, celebrities or create your own businesses, because majority, like, you don't hear a lot of, oh, this person's from Winnipeg or this person's from Winnipeg, right? Most of our successful Canadian stories come from Calgary, Alberta, Edmonton, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, BC, right? Yes. You don't hear a lot of Winnipeg or Manitoba or any of that, right? So being in your location, even if you're in the US or another country, Australia, wherever that may be, your environment in where you're raised and what the expectations of your life are, right? Growing up, my expectation was to be a assistant, to be an executive assistant. I wanted my car, I wanted my house, I wanted my freedom, right? And I got all that, but to me, it still wasn't enough. So when I started my businesses, and as most of you know, I'm multi-passionate. I have 6 businesses. When I started those, I suffered with imposter syndrome, right? When I came out, so my spiritual, I'm a psychic intuitive medium. When I came out, it was like, oh, you're psychic now? And I'm like, no, I've always been psychic. It's just, but the mentality wasn't there of the people that I'd grown up with or the people that I surround myself with, where all I heard was, oh, I that's a little bit out of my box or out of my way of thinking. And You really do see the difference of what people are capable of or what they believe about their own lives based on their friends, their families, their environment, the schooling systems, all of that, right? Even the
Yes.
media saying, you know, how many people do you hear from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada?
Mhm. Oh my gosh, you just mentioned so much in what you had just said there. So much truth to it too, right? Environment really does play a part in it. So interesting to hear your thoughts on that. I didn't think of it in that way.
Yeah.
And how our environment can also impact us, right? And well, even I remember being a student and graduating in Winnipeg. And at that time, I chose to be educated in conflict resolution. And at that time, it wasn't well known. Right. And so taking it out to the community, I was just talking to no one. It didn't land very well in the beginning. Of course, it's gained traction now. And more people are having conversations about it now. And it's becoming normalized now for us to resolve conflict in healthy ways. However, just 10 years ago, when I graduated with it, I didn't look outside my window. There weren't a lot of people that were doing that. And so, to your point, my imposter syndrome was off the charts at that time because, well, I had new information and I was so eager and enthusiastic to share it. Only I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have that inner belief in myself that what I had to share was worthy. At that time, I allowed the external voices to overpower my voice.
My own husband, and I love him absolutely.
Good thing. Good thing.
Yeah, he when I first started my coaching practices and the things that I'm into now, it was I always, my ideal clients were celebrities. They were people in power, people who had high profile positions who weren't happy with themselves, right? And in a way they were successful, but they had their own versions of imposter syndromes because they didn't know who they were and they couldn't express who they truly felt that they were for fear of ridicule or rejection or anything like that, right? So he would tell me, well, don't tell people that right away. And I'm like, but why not? Like, that's my goal, right? When I do the pre-interviews for the show, I say, you know, I'm going to be the next Oprah Winfrey. Like, this is just the way it's going to be. Right. But again, environmental is how many successful, high profile people like you and I do we see in Winnipeg? Right? Most of them, you don't have the talk shows in Winnipeg. You don't have you have the local radio stations and the local TV news and stuff, but you don't have a celebrity base or a base of what I'm doing even in Winnipeg, right? Most of the people here will move. It's like you see Coyote Ugly, the movie Coyote Ugly. I'm old enough to know that movie. So Coyote Ugly, half the movies that are, you know, the most popular, inspirational, empowering movies for young girls and women is that you have to move away from your small town. You have to move away from your small community. You have to go to LA or New York or all of these, you know, Calgary, Vancouver to get a break. Right? So again, more imposter syndrome because you don't live where all the successful people are. You don't surround yourself, right? How many times have we heard the people you surround yourself with are the ones that help you grow further, right? Half my friends have either, you know, surrounded and empowered my business. Half of them don't understand it, so they're not that supportive, but they still love me and support me regardless. They just don't understand. So it's like, I grew up in Winnipeg. Where do I find these people? Right? Like, where do I find people like you and I? It was just coincidence that you and I found each other online.
That's so true.
We don't have
divine timing.
Right? And a lot of communities and a lot of the women that we're talking to today, a lot of the men and women we're talking to today, your environment, your location, the people that you surround yourself with do not define whether or not you are worthy of taking those chances, of being successful, of seeing yourself in the role. My husband and I talked about, potentially moving to BC, but not northern, but not Vancouver, right?
Right.
I don't care where we live. My entire career is remote. I'm okay with that, most of it. But you don't have to move away to be successful. You don't have to move or surround yourself with people. You just have to believe in yourself. Imposter syndrome is within you. It's not exterior. Yes, okay, we created those beliefs that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I have to work 10 times harder. If you have a disability or a mental impairment, you start questioning all of these, your level of worthiness, right? If you've had failures, then you're questioning because of that. Your worthiness is not defined. Your imposter syndrome, or your ability to feel not an imposter, comes from within you. It's your confidence, your belief in what you're doing, your why of what you're doing, and how emotional you are behind that, and how empowered you are behind that. I don't care what anybody thinks. I tell everybody I'm the Oprah Winfrey, Tony Robbins baby, but better, because I'm a combination. And I'm going to be the next Oprah. And they're like, that's amazing, right? And it's like, some of them have been condescending, some of them have been totally empowered, right? But their reaction doesn't bother me, because I know what I know, and I know how much I'm going to put into it. Imposter syndrome is literally just a belief.
Absolutely right. And I think, to your point, Melissa, that many of us, going through childhood, and well, when we think about our education and the way that we're taught what to think, right? Especially in the public school system, they feed you everything. It's not about how to think, it's what to think, right? You're given everything. And then as we go into adulthood, if we haven't developed that inner belief that you're speaking about, if we haven't developed within ourselves, well, then as we enter the workforce and we don't have that self-awareness about who we are and what makes us happy, well, then we go into these external environments and we're swayed by the other opinions, others' beliefs, others' thoughts about how we should be doing things and what success should be. Right, Melissa? Like, I know you had spoke about how you were checking off the boxes from youth into adulthood, which, could look like, especially for a girl, finishing your education, finding a partner, getting married, having children, getting the house, getting the job, striving for retirement. And what we find, and I'm included in this statistic, that many of us check the boxes only to discover we don't know who we are and we don't know what makes us happy. Right? And so, to your point, right, in that belief about who we are and what makes us happy does need to come from within. However, how much time and effort do we really give to that as we're aging, as we're going from youth into adulthood?
Yep.
Right? And so I love having these conversations now, as I feel that it's the lack of conversations about these things, and specifically imposter syndrome, that lead to negative emotional states. And that is because we feel alone. We feel like no one else is talking about this, so I must be the only one suffering from it. And to your earlier point, Melissa, when I was suffering with imposter syndrome, I didn't talk to anyone, because, well, who the hell do you talk to? I didn't know who to talk to. Now, having said that, I did have friends in my circle and we talked about it, although I was pursuing different things than my friends. And so I couldn't connect on that topic with everyone.
Yeah.
And so living in Winnipeg, and it was about finding resources and finding people, finding other entrepreneurs, finding others who have overcome imposter syndrome, and then having conversations with them.
Absolutely. And we need to do that. We need to surround ourselves, like your business, Genuine Conversations, right? You're focused on doing that.
Yes.
The show is focused on doing that. I have Women Supporting Women Can, my network that's doing that. And all of it comes down to, building connections, building those conversations, having people witness those conversations and say, yes, I'm feeling like an imposter. I couldn't get in front. I couldn't get on a stage. I couldn't get in front of people. Doing any videos would take me, any pre-recorded videos would take me like 50 takes, to the point where I would just give up. Taking pictures, like selfies for business or anything along those lines, I'd do 100 just to accept one.
Yes.
And I couldn't stand being the center of attention. But then when I removed the imposter syndrome, and I'm going to give everybody my little clip of a story. There is my imposter syndrome affected me for many years, because nobody truly saw my vision. Nobody truly saw who I was underneath. And I struggled with expressing that. And when I finally got clear on what I wanted in my businesses, what I wanted in my everyday life, everything started to turn around. And I have massive stage fright. Yet I started a talk show, go figure. But I went to, my girlfriend invited me to the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra a couple weeks ago. And I went, and Paul Schaefer and Valerie Simpson were on stage. And I'm sitting in the 7th row in like the middle. And I'm just like, my inner 5-year-old, and I'm going to say my 5-year-old because it was a temper tantrum. My inner 5-year-old was going, I want to be on stage. And I, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, what? Like, I want to be up there? And I'm just like shocked, right? Instant shock, because I'm like, when would I ever say that I want to be up there? Like, I have massive stage fright and anxiety about being on stage. And then I'm like, no, but I seriously do want to be up there. And my entire, it shifted. Everything shifted to be like, I wonder if I even do have stage fright anymore. And it was just this whole change, right? And I realized that I had removed the imposter syndrome. I had removed, and I knew the validity, and I didn't need the exterior validation, but I knew what I was trying to create. And you know what? It was actually creating this show that changed it all for me. And in the last, this show has been, officially live since the end of January. And in that time, in our 55 episodes, because today is 55,
Yay! Congrats.
I haven't looked for the validation. I did it my way. I have boundaries in place. I have, hard limit no's that I don't go past. And I now have people messaging me because they want to be a part of what I'm doing. I have people, I had somebody try to take advantage of what I'm doing and monopolize on it. I have another person who wants to join my network. Like, there's so many different things happening that I wasn't searching for the validation. I did what I wanted to do. And anybody listening, please listen to this one piece. I did what was number one, what felt right for me. I didn't go based on what everybody else wanted. I went based on my thoughts, my beliefs, my need to feel a certain way, my need to create something that fit me. And I have gotten the validation. I have gotten the hand clapping. I have gotten the standing ovations. I have gotten all of that without needing any of it.
Now I just feel freedom.
Exactly, right? Now that I'm not looking for the validation that I'm not an imposter, I get it.
That is such a great story, as we can really get stuck up in our heads. And especially when we're trying to create a business and we look outside of our window and we see what others are doing, and we forget that someone is ahead of us. Someone's ahead of us and someone's behind us. So in actuality, we're ahead of the people that are behind us, but we forget that. And when we're looking at the people who are already established and at times could be 10 years ahead of us, we forget that. And we think that we have to show up in the beginning as the expert. And we simply can't. That's the imposter in us, right? Thinking that we have to show up and at the very beginning and know everything and be the expert and have all the answers. And that's just not possible.
I don't know if anybody caught that. I apologize. If anybody caught that mumble under my breath, then I apologize. I cursed a little bit under my breath there for a minute.
No, I didn't catch it.
I don't know what it is. I'm the type of person where just inspiration hits me. It's like it slaps me across the face when I'm least expecting it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, and I'm not promoting, I have, my 6 businesses. And while you were talking about the people ahead of us, right, and the people behind us,
Mm-hmm.
I created this show. Nobody else was doing this.
Right.
I created something so unique. Nobody else is doing it, right?
Love that.
And so I didn't have anybody to base it off of. I didn't have the processes to base anything off of. I did it my way, right? And I didn't look to outside. I did some research. Not gonna lie, totally did some research. But nothing worked for me. So I did it my way. Now, I created a business. I just launched my 6th business. And I have a business partner for that. And I'm not promoting, again, I just want to explain because it's part of my story. But we do business mentoring, and the people that we highlight, and it's again a very unique model. It's two coaches in one practice. So she is the management and strategy behind business, and I am the mindset and image behind business.
Okay.
Right? So add them together. Our focus is that it's not one size fits all. Right. Yeah. Right? It's not, and it's creating something that you want to create, right? Even for myself, I've struggled in my business. Absolutely. My identity coaching, my spiritual teaching, I've struggled because I've tried to emulate other people. While my teaching is different, I've tried to emulate the marketing and the social and all of those strategies for other people, right? Taking, courses from business coaches, going, you have to do it this way, this way, this way. And then I'm like, no, I don't like that. Hence why we started our own. But it got me thinking, and I just got a marketing for my business. And I want to share it just quickly, is that everybody's like, well, you have to have a niche, right? And it's like, okay, so I do a Phoenix Identity, which is identity coaching. And it's all mindset. And they're like, well, you have to pick one thing in there. And I'm just like, you know what? I honestly just got it. And so I wanted to write it down, which is why I grabbed the pen and I cursed a little bit, because I'm like, I always get inspiration at the weirdest possible time.
I love that.
It's like in the shower, right?
Yes, of course. It's, you're doing a mindless activity. And so your mind things can drop in now, right? Usually our minds are so busy. It's like, no time for new ideas.
Yeah.
But when we slow down, right? Like something like a shower or a walk or doing those dishes, all of a sudden it's like all these ideas come in.
For me, it's conversation.
Yeah.
I've actually, a couple weeks ago, we did starting over after 40. And in that one, I created a new coaching package.
I love it.
Absolutely, right? And it's just because I love having the conversations. Conversations work for me in so many different ways, right?
Right.
And that's one of the main reasons I created the show. I wanted to have somewhere I could show up consistently, share my knowledge, my value, have meaningful conversations that are going to engage the audience to create happier, healthier lives for themselves. And then added benefit that I didn't even think of is I get to have conversations where all these downloads are
Yes.
coming in and I'm
Right.
even more. So, so what I just ended up realizing is that I don't have a target client, right?
Okay.
Everybody's like, oh, you have to have, they're like, well, what do you help people with? And I'm like, mindset, identity, all of that. And they're like, well, you need to pick something, right? Because they're always like, you need to pick something, you need to niche down. Where you're at is my niche.
Yes.
Okay. So my niche isn't what you're struggling with. My niche is not, my niche are individuals, male or female, who either don't know who they are, don't know where they want to go, don't like they're disconnected and they're unhappy and they want to change it.
That's a lot of people.
But it's not, I don't have specific requirements of what my clients' issues are. My requirement is one, you had to have done some work already. Because if you've already done some work, but it's just not working, that's where I come in. If you've already done some work and it's just not working, that's when I come in. If the fact that you are ready to do the work is another thing, right? The next one is be open to the different perspectives. If you don't match those, you don't match me.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, well, what do you work with? I said, I work with everybody. Like, I work with everybody. I work with individuals, couples, families, groups, because I have the internal to help. It's your ability to help yourself is my need.
Yeah, right. I mean, we definitely want to find clients that are willing, that are able, and that are ready.
Yep.
Right. And that could be finding a needle in a haystack sometimes. Sometimes we're willing, sometimes we're able, sometimes we're not ready. And so, right, that's the journey though. And that's the beautiful thing about having conversations like this is sometimes we need to hear more until we're ready.
Yep, absolutely.
And something that I just want to take a moment to slow us down. And you brought up just so many good things recently. And something that kept popping up for me is the word failure. And taking me back to like entrepreneurship is really about, like you're saying, trial and error. It's really about putting yourself out there and trying different things and failing, and trying different things and failing, and trying different things and succeeding, and trying different things and failing. Right? It's that up and down movement. It's that trial and error until we find our sweet spot, until everything aligns, right? And what's interesting about failure is I know for myself, during my childhood, I was taught to avoid failure at all costs. I was taught that failure was a negative. And I took that with me into adulthood. And as you can imagine, having that entrepreneurial spirit within me that wants to try new things and then not being successful on the first attempt would used to shut me right down. I used to have that fixed mindset, that thought, oh shit, I tried that. I'm not good at it. Must mean I'm not good at it. I'm moving on. And in fact, I did that. I did that in my own career. I folded up like a cheap tent when I was trying something so new. It had me right out of my comfort zone. And the reason I wanted it was for that reach. It was a new level for me. And looking back, hindsight's 2020, I put all this pressure on myself to perform and to get it right Because, well, I was in that fixed mindset that had me believing that failure was to be avoided at all costs. And what I've discovered on my entrepreneurial journey is that I'm never going to move the needle if I'm scared to try and fail. And believe me, I'm 2 years in and I have failed in getting what I wanted right off the bat, right? I was naive in my thinking and thought that things were going to move faster than they were. The number one lie, and many of us entrepreneurs like to tell ourselves, oh, this is going to happen fast. And we forget that business takes time to grow, to build, and to develop, just like us.
Just like everything, right? It's very rare to find your perfect partner or your ideal partner on your first try. Mm-hmm. You have to try them. Right. I've been in business almost 6 years, mm-hmm. and I have failed, and I, like you, avoided failure, right? And it was, oh, I'm not working as a positivity coach. Okay, I'm going to change it to spiritual mindset coach. Well, I'm not working there. I'm just going to split my businesses. And it was all these different things that I tried over the last 5 years, but every single one of them taught me something new. It taught me something I could either use or avoid going forward. Every person or every mentor, every coach that I've worked with over the last 5 years, and I've worked with a few, has taught me something valuable, whether that's something I didn't want to do myself, whether that's something I didn't like. I had one who taught me that as soon as the money stopped coming in, I didn't matter.
Really?
Right? Wow. I had an interview series at one point. She stood me up for it.
Well, that's tough.
Right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't valuable at that point. And so everybody you work with, whether it seems like a failure, whether it seems like wasted money, it's all of those people have something valuable, something integral to creating your business, to creating a life that you need. Every one of my relationships taught me something that I needed to learn to get where I am today. Every one of my, and Winston Churchill said, failure is the stepping stone to success. And it absolutely is. And I like to say they're the springboard to success, right? Because you think about it, all those negative thoughts, all those negative emotions, imposter syndrome, like we're talking about today. If you feel like an imposter, you can let that stop you, or you can let that springboard you forward into not being an imposter.
Right. And I love your point. What I heard you just talk about is feedback, right? When we experience an event where we didn't get the outcome we wanted, we get to choose. We either can stop right there and decide, that's it, I can't handle this, I'm not going any further. Or we get to reflect on the feedback that was given during the event. And we can either take it to heart, we can either take it personal. I know I used to do that. I would take feedback as criticism. And I had to do my inner work to let go of that. Not all feedback is negative. It wasn't until I started to do my inner work that I intentionally started to ask for that feedback. And then I had to, sort out the kernel of truth in there, because there's always some truth in there. Oh, that's the tough thing about feedback, right? Sometimes we just don't want to hear the truth. And yet that feedback can really help you. It can really catapult you out of your comfort zone if you're willing to hear it differently, right? If you're willing to think about it differently.
And that is exactly the thing. Our emotional reaction to what we're being heard, to what we're being told, to what we're experiencing is ours. If we're taking something as negative criticism, you have to ask yourself, first and foremost, is that person intentionally trying to be negative? You can't assume somebody's intention by your emotional reaction, because your emotional reaction is a part of your beliefs, and your beliefs are what control your emotions, not somebody else's actions, thoughts, or words, right? If somebody calls me the B word, I can go, your point? Like, okay. I am, absolutely no problem with that. Are you like, and then go further and say, are you trying to hurt my feelings? Because that doesn't, right? So not assuming that everything, right? But if I walked up to you and I was like, oh my God, hi, and then I use that word, right? The connotation of that is different, right?
Yes.
But for somebody who doesn't like being called that, if I said, oh my God, hi B, how are you? Right? You'd be like, I don't like being called that. That's not okay. Right? And then just totally negative. And I'm like, whoa, like I didn't mean, no, like that's endearment for me. Like that's like saying sweetheart, like we're good. Right? I don't need that. But that's the thing, it's the intention behind it, right? And
yes,
we react when we don't know the intention. We react because we assume that the intention is negative. That's where the difference between criticism and feedback comes in, right?
Yes.
If somebody says, I can't make it to a show, I don't feel it's right for me, or, I'll be like, right on, not a problem. But can I ask why? Right? Because I want to know why. I want to know if it's something that I've done. I want to know why it's not a good fit. Right? And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the response. There are people who do pre-screening interviews for the show and they're like, you know what? I really just don't feel it. I'm like, absolutely not a problem, right? Normally I'll feel it too. But at the same time, everybody's entitled to that.
Absolutely. And, kudos to the person that knows themselves well enough to say, hey, the vibe's not here. Because really, we're doing ourselves a disservice when we people please. And I know that because I'm a recovering people pleaser. Yeah. Right. And so I was the one that would do the things, even though it wasn't what I wanted and it didn't make me happy.
Yeah. And imposter syndrome is bad for that. When we have imposter syndrome, we do everything possible to make the other person happy, whether that's giving our time, our energy, our love, our money, our sweat, our blood, our tears, doesn't matter. We will put ourselves into situations or positions that don't make us happy to please other people. Imposter syndrome does the same thing. Right? You want the validation. And here, for all business owners, coaches, all of this, imposter syndrome will create a need to take on any client, anywhere, help them with anything, even if you are not qualified. And by qualified, I do not mean certification. By qualified, I mean that you have the knowledge, school, tools, and techniques to help utilize their growth or help promote their growth. What it is imposter syndrome does, it's like, nope, we're going to do this. Nope, we're going to do that. We're going to take on this person because I just want the testimonials. I just want people to be happy with me. I just want to, I want to get my business off the ground. You're actually doing more harm than good in your business when you try to take on everything, when you try to do everything and anything to make yourself not feel like an imposter. You're actually making yourself feel even more like an imposter.
Right. And in those beginning stages is when the fear, the doubt, and the limiting beliefs, they're swirling like mad. You, as an early stage entrepreneur, are trying to promote and sell an idea. And if you don't have that belief in that idea deep within your soul, well, guess what? You're going to have a very difficult time promoting and marketing. And I say that from experience. Right? I really I've learned so much in 2 years, deciding to come to market during a pandemic. I wasn't prepared for that. I'm sure many people weren't. I know I'm not alone in that. Right? And so that imposter syndrome has come up so many times along my journey. And I know that it's not always a negative, right? Now, if it debilitates us and it paralyzes us and we get stuck in our thinking, then we would do ourselves a service by finding ways to overcome imposter syndrome. And yet, imposter syndrome doesn't go away, right? We're continually evolving as humans. And where we are today, we may not be in the same spot a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. And the more we overcome, like to use your example, Melissa, initially you weren't comfortable coming to camera, weren't comfortable doing lives, and that imposter syndrome popped up, and now you were able to overcome it, and here we are. Well, something tells me, my spidey senses are tingling, this isn't the end of your journey. You're going to have to overcome another fear come as your business grows and as you develop and as you build the business, right?
It's everyday life though. Every
Yes.
day we're overcoming and facing something that we may not like about each other or ourselves, or that we has become unaligned with who we are as we grow, right? Because we're always growing. We're always growing and we're always shifting. And as we grow and shift, those beliefs that we hold in our pillars, because I've done the 7 mindset pillars, in those pillars, those beliefs start to become unaligned. They start to not be who they don't represent who we truly are anymore. And as we're shifting and growing, so is our business, so are our relationships, so are our friendships, our family lives, our everyday needs change as we grow, right? And it's retaining the confidence of and your sense of identity as you go through that, and being able to say, that no longer works for me. That no longer works for me. I actually went from massive stage fright. I used to do 4-hour Facebook lives doing readings. That's how I started. I would do readings. I would go live randomly whenever I want. And I felt good. And I found some success doing that. And then I shifted. And when I started to shift, that's when the fear came up again. That's when the imposter syndrome came up again, right? Because I transitioned from doing readings to coaching. And then it was the spiral. And now again, I'm back, right? And it feels great. And we're always going through those shifts. Now, I do know that you need to stop right away. So I will
girl, we're chatty today.
Yeah. Time to wrap it up.
I could talk about this all day.
Yep. So is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
I just want to leave on one positive note, which, you were just kind of touching on it. And that is to celebrate our wins, right? And reflection is so important along our journey. And when we're feeling like an imposter, that's our opportunity to reflect and to go within and remind ourselves what we have been able to overcome. And if at that point we find that we're still not able to do it alone, well, then I would definitely invite you to find the right supports, because this is something that imposter syndrome is definitely something that you could say goodbye to. It doesn't have to paralyze you. It doesn't have to stop your business from building and growing. However, if left unattended, it definitely can keep you stuck in your tracks. Yep. And so asking for help is one of those ways that we can just get what we need in order to overcome it.
Yeah. There's people like you and I, there's Facebook groups, there's programs and courses and a bunch of things that
lots of books. Right.
I definitely recommend that as well. I think that, overcoming imposter syndrome and knowing how to utilize it, because you're right. If left untreated, it's debilitating. It is life shattering, business shattering, relationship shattering, right? And the longer it's untreated, the worse off you feel, right? And the more it starts to impact other areas of your life.
True.
And then you just keep feeling like you don't know who you are, and it just again spirals. So I totally agree with that. All right. Well, Thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us today. For anybody watching, today's episode is sponsored by Genuine Conversations, which just happens to be Jennifer Beitz's company. She has a podcast. She's got some courses that she's linked above that she welcomes you to come and enroll in that are going to help you shatter your limiting beliefs and create a better life for yourself, create that confidence and that self-love, and create genuine connection.
I love it. Yes,
So
Melissa.
So important.
Yes, and thank you so much for connecting with me today. It was such a pleasure to be a guest on your show today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us. So anybody watching, please like, follow, and share the show. We do have a newsletter on the website at justalivetv.com. We have a bunch of new and exciting things coming up for you. And I'm not going to tell you those right now, but you'll just have to wait and see. Again, like, follow, and share on your social media platforms. Join our newsletter. Also, I would like to express that if you would like to reach out to either myself or to Jennifer, you can do so. Our links are in the description of this video or podcast, however you're watching or listening. You can go to the website or YouTube or many of our multiple social media platforms and catch up on episodes that you may not have seen. And for everybody, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I will see you on the next episode.